Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special video series called Understanding Aperture. This is part 1 in the series. I am Mike Direhorse, your host, and let's get started right away. I'd like to start off by saying this is a beginner photography course, so if you are an advanced photographer, you may want to skip this video and find a more advanced video out there. But this course is for all the beginners out there that just want to learn how to use their camera better, how to start in manual mode, adjusting the aperture yourself so you can start taking control of your photography. So first off, let's start out with the f-stop numbers, okay? F-stop numbers go from let's say 1.4 to let's say f22. What those numbers reflect, if you are at f1.4, the smaller the number, the bigger the opening of your lens. The bigger the number, the smaller the opening of your lens will be. If any of you have done any electrical work, it's basically the same thing as gauges of wires, okay? The bigger the number, the smaller the wire. The smaller the number, the bigger the wire, right? It's the same thing if you think of it that way. What you need to understand about aperture is essentially all it is the opening and closing of your lens. And here to help me demonstrate the effects of aperture for you today, I have a special guest. I'll give you a hint on who this guest is. He is green and muscular. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk is going to be my model as we talk about aperture. So I have here an 85mm Rokinon lens. It has a very wide aperture at f1.4, and it can close down to a small aperture of f22. Right now, I have this lens set at f1.4. And as you recall, smaller the number, it means what? Bigger the opening. As you can see right through this lens. I'm going to put my hands here. You can see my fingers on the other side of the lens. This lens is wide open right now. If I close it down, you'll be able to see it goes black. It has a very small opening of about 2mm right now, and that is at f22. So let's open it back up again. We're at 1.4. What are some of the effects of aperture, depending on whether you have it wide open or if you have it closed down? What an aperture allows your camera to do is either let in more light or less light. So if you have it wide open like I have it right now at f1.4, it's letting in a lot of light. Then if I have it closed down to f22, which is a little 2mm opening of the aperture, it's letting in very little light. So that is one of the controls you have with aperture, is closing off the light or allowing a lot of light to come into your camera. And your goal as a photographer is always, if you are on the manual setting of your camera, you are looking to get the light right. You want the amount of light coming into your camera to be right, to expose the image the way you want it. If there's too much light coming into your camera, it's going to be overexposed. If there's not enough light coming into your camera, it's going to be underexposed. Now, with this knowledge that you have learned, another effect that aperture gives you is focus, meaning the amount of your image that is in focus or out of focus. And I have two terms for you: shallow depth of field and deep depth of field. If you have your aperture wide open at f1.4 and you are doing a portrait, and let's use my model, the Incredible Hulk here, I focus right on the Incredible Hulk's eyes which is what you should be doing as a portrait photographer. Always try to focus on the eyes. If I'm at 1.4 and I focus on the eyes of the subject, everything beyond that focus point right there is going to be a smooth, creamy, blurred out frame here. And that is called shallow depth of field. On the opposite side of that, if I close down this aperture to f22, focus on the eyes again, a lot more is going to be in focus beyond my subject. That is called a deep depth of field. So you have to approach your images knowing what kind of photograph do you want to take. Do you want a deep depth of field, or do you want a shallow depth of field? And all of that is going to depend on, one, the imagination of the image that you have in your head. Also, with your subject matter. Are you doing portraits? Are you doing landscapes? What are you taking a photograph of? If you're doing a landscape or a cityscape, you're going to want all of your image to be in focus, or as much of it as possible to be in focus. Okay? So you're probably going to want what? A smaller aperture, so you can have a what? Deeper depth of field. Okay? If you're shooting portraits, you're probably going to want a shallow depth of field. Now, why is that? Mainly because it makes your subject pop out of the background that you are shooting at, okay? So if I focus right here on my subject with a wide open aperture and I create a nice shallow depth of field, all this ugly background that you may be in a place where there's things in the background that you just don't want to show up in your photo, or you don't want it to distract your audience from the subject. So it is very nice to have a shallow depth of field, blur out that background, make your subject pop out of the background so there's less distraction and it just looks very nice. Okay, so that's enough talk on the beginnings of Aperture. I hope you learned something today. And now we're going to head over to part 2 of this series, where we're going to put some of this into action with my model here, the Incredible Hulk. So I'll see you on the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. If you have anybody that's getting into photography and would like to learn the basics, you've come to the right place. Now get out there and catch the light.